Today I want to discuss about shadows in Fusion. I want to see how I can extract shadows from 3D into 2D to get a 2D shadow path so I can do post-processing on shadows. And I even came up with an idea how I can bring them back into 3D if necessary. All of this was prompted by a comment on one of my YouTube videos yesterday where someone asked me how you can get soft shadows from OpenGL renderer, which by specification is not possible, but usually everything that's not possible in Fusion, there's some kind of workaround which makes it possible. So I played around a bit with it and want to share my findings about it so far. This will be a little bit on the advanced side, so I assume that you know about spotlights and about some rendering of 3D objects, etc. in Fusion in general. So if that's for you, then let's get started. I have here a simple test scene. Here I have my dog from a green screen extraction. That's not a great green screen and not a great extraction, but doesn't matter, just for testing purposes. This dog I have put on an image plane here. So just 2D image plane, that's it. And placed this image plane in my test scene here. Just a simple rectangular room, and I have two spotlights which create these shadows. Well, there are three spotlights, two of them create shadows, and I get the shadows from the image plane from this dog. So this works because I have the software renderer here at the moment. If you use the OpenGL renderer, you just get shadows that look like this. So you just get shadows from the image plane, but not from the alpha channel. So the OpenGL renderer renders the alpha channel correctly, but it does not calculate shadows from the alpha channel. So it does not create shadows from transparent images. So that's the problem with the OpenGL renderer. Now, of course, you can always use the software renderer, but the downside is, or the reason why you might want to use the OpenGL renderer is that it can support accumulation effects. So if you want realistic depth of field, it seems like you have to choose, do I want shadows or do I want the depth of field capabilities that the OpenGL renderer offers? And so let's see how we can work around this. First, since the software renderer gives me shadows, let me think about how I can extract them. And a simple way would be to render once with shadows and once without, and then take the difference. So let's quickly do this. I'll just quickly copy the render node here. And in the copy, I just disable the shadows, keep the rest the same, merge these two together, and in the merge go to subtraction, or a difference it's called here. So now I have one render node with shadows, one without, and the difference image gives me only the shadows, and now it gives me the shadows here with the color and so on. But I can use this now as a mask, so let's create a mask from this by adding a bitmap tool, which will just take the color values and bring them into the alpha channel, or the luminance. I can take the luminance here, bring this into the alpha channel. So now I have an alpha channel bitmap here. And if I want to bring the shadows now into 2D, I could just use this alpha channel to color correct my shadow-free output. I can just use, for example, brightness and contrast or any other form of color correction, mask it off with my shadows, and then bring the shadows in as changes through the brightness and contrast. If I bring the lift down, for example, I can, darken this or play with the gamma, and I can get, let's compare with the renderer originally with the shadows. So these were my original shadows, and here on the side I bring in my gamma. I can also desaturate them if necessary. So I have now full control and can bring them in and out via color corrections. Okay, so this way I have my shadows now into 2D. I can blur them if I want, etc. I can do whatever 2D manipulation I want to do. Now, what if I want to use the OpenGL renderer, and if I want to have my depth of field effects, and I want to have shadows? So this is where it's getting a little bit tricky. Of course, I could do this shadow, this 2D trick on the OpenGL renderer, right? So I can add another renderer here. Let's copy it one more time. Switch this to OpenGL. Disable the shadows, and now here I can, for example, have my depth of field effect. Let's see what I get here by default. Okay, that's, I think I just have to reduce it a bit, so let's just reduce the amount of blur. So now I have something here with depth of field, and I could bring the shadow on it in exactly the same way. However, in that case, I would first blur and then add the shadow. But if I want the shadow in an entirely realistic way together with the depth of field, I should have first the shadow and then calculate the depth of field, right? So in order to get this, I would need a way to bring my 2D shadow back into the 3D environment. Again, the OpenGL renderer does not give me a shadow. So if the OpenGL renderer doesn't do it, how do I get my shadow in? And the idea I came up with now is has a little bit of trickery. So basically what I can do is I can project things back into the scene from a 2D image and use a replace material node to replace my image and replace it with a texture which I captured from the other renderer. Okay, that sounds a bit complicated, but actually it is not as complicated as it sounds. So basically I want to use an image from this renderer or this shadow image, and want to use this to feed it back into here. So a few things I need. First of all, I need a replace material, and I will bring this in here before the OpenGL renderer. And by default, this replace material now just replaces the whole scene with white. That's not what I want. Actually, what I want to keep the whole scene, but only bring the shadows in, add the shadows to the scene that was there before, and then be able to render without the shadows at the end. So to bring the shadows here from my 2D image, I can project them into it and attach them, and then in the material, instead of replacing the whole material, I can multiply them in. So I'm basically creating a texture from the shadows, projecting that texture into the scene, and then multiplying that texture with whatever texture was coming before from my scene. Let's set this up and then you will see how it works. So first of all, I set my replace material to multiply, except the alpha actually. The alpha I can keep, so I don't want to change the transparency, and I want to multiply everything with the material input, and there's currently no material input attached. Where do I get it? I get it from two places. First of all, I need to set up a projection. So for this, I just copy this camera here and set up a camera, a second camera, and this camera should project my material into the second scene I'm creating here. Let me, to visually separate this, also bring in another merge node here. So I bring in a merge node, attach the camera here, and now I want to attach a shadow to this camera. Where do I get this shadow? I don't need the whole image, I only want the shadow. So I will do something else. I will just create a quick black and white image, maybe with two background nodes, and just have a black background over a white background, which I mask out with my shadow bitmap. Let's see how that looks like. And I don't see anything yet, but let me make this hard for now. I make this like a completely hard shadow for now. So just so that we can see, and we can later correct this again if you want it semi-transparent, but just something very obvious for the beginning. Now this image is white everywhere and black where the shadows should be. So if I multiply this image, if I multiply with white, nothing happens. So I multiply with 1. And if I multiply with black or with darker values, I am darkening the resulting image. So that's the idea here. That's why I make this black and white image. And now how do I get it in? I connect this image to my camera, which turns this camera here into a projector. Let me space this out a little bit. So I have, and maybe I need to make this a bit bigger so you can see what's happening. So I have created my black and white shadow image, put it into a camera, which turns the camera into a projector, enable the projection, and I make a texture projection. Now this texture projection needs to be caught by a catcher node. So let me add a catcher node. This node creates a material property out of whatever it catches from the camera. And I'm attaching this now to the replace material node. And now my replace material gets the shadow image from this shadow material from this catcher, which catches it from the camera and multiplies it in with the incoming scene image. So this is my incoming image. This should now be multiplied. And if I look into the renderer, you see now I have multiplied completely strong, black shadows into the scene inside the renderer. So I got this into my material here already. Now I can, of course, if I don't want them that black, I can color correct my background here. So either way, I need to color correct this black and white image. So let me keep the alpha and just change, go to a grayscale value here. So this way I can color correct the shadows with which I am multiplying here. And now I have, let's compare actually. This was the software renderer, and here I have my shadows with the OpenGL renderer and accumulation effects. Okay, this was the trickery I could come up with. If you have any other thoughts how to do this or have tried something else before, let me know in the comments. It's always stimulating to see how people use Fusion and try out new things and different things. This was a bit more on the advanced side, and I don't expect for this tutorial to go viral, but hey, the dog is cute, right? So maybe click like for that. Okay, thanks for watching. See you next time.